Okay, so hopefully somebody will get some good out of the recording, but don't feel like the whole world is listening in on us tonight because there's not, I think I had 6 people registered. I know somebody wasn't going to be here tonight, so not a whole lot of people. So, like I said, you don't need to feel like you don't need to be subconscious. Not everybody is watching you. All right. So, how many people got to go through the tonight's slides ahead of time? Okay, you did. I know you did. Nope. Okay. So you might be playing a little bit of catch up, but it's out there on the website, and feel free to stop and ask any questions as we're going through it. So um, I think we'll go ahead and start out with the Kahoot quizzes. So it's an online if you've got a laptop or a cell phone, and can get to it's Kahoot.com and click on play. It's kind of silly, but by getting you to reiterate what you've learned, you retain it better. And we're not going to like score anything, or I mean, it scores automatically, but we're not really doing a competition. Hopefully, we can buzz through these real quick, and then it'll show me where we maybe need to spend a little more time explaining things if there's something where you're not getting the answers. Are you having trouble getting in? Yeah. I don't know if you have to, if it's making you. If Yep. Oh, where did I don't know what I just hit. There we go. Yeah, 856-4011. Did somebody get kicked off? It was showing 3 before. Are you all 4 on there? Okay, there we go. Anybody know how to get rid of this? There, I think we'll do it. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so yep, it's 2 million. Um, yeah, it's an awful lot of work to make a pound of honey. And then there's also a figure in there that they travel like the circumference of the world once or twice. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot of work. Okay, here's the next one. Okay. So what was the? Yeah. Colony and hive do end up getting used interchangeably a lot, but usually a hive, we're talking about the woodenware, or and the colony as the bees that are in the hive. And you'll hear me use it incorrectly frequently, so I need to get better at that. Okay. Yes. Oh no, sorry. The honey's made out of nectar. So the plants exude this, and it's got like a low sugar content in it. It's liquid. The bees bring it into their honey stomach or honey crop, bring it back into the hive, and basically dehydrate it. And at the same time, they're adding some enzymes to it that convert that sugar into something they can use, something that we can use. So the pollen is their, Dave or Dean, help me out here. Pollen's their protein source, and the honey is their carbohydrate source. You keep getting kicked out? Okay. All right. You're in? Okay. The Wi-Fi here is not great. Yep. So that one is true. Yep. That's really the only way honeybees can reproduce is by kicking out a swarm, raising new queens. Yep. Yeah. That ball of bees hanging in a tree. Yeah. Yeah. So, and we'll get into swarming more detail and like the whole, when we raise queens, we follow a lot of things that the bees do naturally in the swarming process to convince them to raise a queen for us. So we'll cover that quite a bit more. Yeah, good one. Okay. Yeah, so that one, it's 4 to 6 weeks, which is pretty short, but and a lot of that is because they're working so hard. They'll wear their wings out, wear themselves out. Okay, that one is true. And I just learned recently that the queen, it's not just one sperm when she lays the egg, that's several. And I'd never heard that before, but I just learned a while back that, yeah, there's actually multiple sperm when she lays up one egg. Okay. So the population drops off in the winter, and when it's cold, they can't raise new bees. So in the spring is when they're going to be at their lowest population, and then they build up pretty quick. And if you're lucky, that population peaks before the nectar flow kicks in June. But late summer, middle of summer is when they're at their highest population level, and it fluctuates a lot more than you probably expect. Okay. There we go. So yeah, our nectar flow here usually kicks in about the middle of June and runs through the middle of July into July. Varies from year to year and depends a little bit on where you're at too. Even north of Sioux City, south of Sioux City can make a difference. Okay. Yep. So they get in a ball in the center of the hive. They vibrate their wing muscles to generate heat, and then they have to eat honey so that they've got the energy to generate heat and all the way from fall until spring until it warms up again. Okay, cool. I think that was the last one. So are you Adam? Oh, you're Adam, right? Good job. Any questions on any of that or anything that you need more detail on? We'll jump into the next one quick. Okay, so there's a pin for this one. Does anybody need the front light off so you can read the screen any better? Or is it okay? It's good? Okay. All right. There we go. If you do get kicked off and want me to advance, let me know and I can skip if you're having trouble. Okay, so yep, 2 to 3 weeks. And I think I probably said last week more like 1 to 2. I probably need to revise that a little bit. But okay, yep, middle of June to middle of July. Okay. And about the only time you can check them in the winter is when it's like 55 and sunny, or sometimes colder than that with a real intense sun. But not a lot you can do, but you do need to keep an eye on them and make sure they're not running out of honey. Awesome. Yep. Dave, how many times did you get stung this week? How many times did you get stung this week? None. Why are you good? One for you? Cool. So confuse the bees. Some people might think that that's what it does. And one of the side effects is they do tend to fill up on honey. But the main thing is it's masking the pheromones. Cool. If you didn't get them, there are catalogs, free catalogs from Dayton's available and free magazines too. So it depends is really the best answer because I mean some people don't want someone else's problems. When you buy a nuke, you get 4 or 5 frames of someone else's, and they're old, crappy frames. And some people want a package so they don't have to deal with those old. You don't know what a nuke is? Okay, okay. So yeah, a nuke is it's short for a nucleus. It's basically it's the bare minimum of a colony. So it's 4 or 5 frames that are all drawn out, covered in bees, and it's got a laying queen in there and the bees. So there's bees of all stages in a nuke, and then usually there's a frame of honey and one with maybe some honey and some pollen. So that's one way we get started is to buy the 5 frames of bees. The other way is package. Package. We have a feeder can in here, queen hanging in the cage, and 3 pounds of bees. So there's no there's no frames. There's just the bees and a little bit of hardware. But we will get into more detail on the pros and cons of both and which help you decide which one's going to be right for you. Okay. So did we get one answer in every category there? Am I reading that right? Okay. So December can be important because it gets cold enough here that, yeah, if you've got a chance to check them and make sure that there's enough honey left in December, I wouldn't say it's a bad idea. Um, February, March, and April is when it really gets tricky around here. It's colder and we have some more fluctuations, and plus it's a few more months past the point when they brought the honey in. So the spring is when it's really important. I think another reason that people say that is you can kind of get fooled in that spring hits and the weather's warming up and you're thinking the bees are still alive, they're okay. Well, it's warming up and they're flying, but there's not really enough nectar out there for them to bring in. So they're active, they're burning off more energy, but they're not bringing nectar in. And if you're not keeping an eye on them, they can run out of the honey that's left and they'll die, even though it's warm. So that might be one of the reasons why I picked those months as being the more important. Okay. Yeah, because we've sent them into winter usually in 2 boxes. So there's 2 deep 10-frame boxes out there in the atrium. That's usually what we use for winter. And then in the spring they'll start building up. They won't even fill those 2 boxes until April or May. Then all of a sudden, before that nectar flow kicks in June, you need to make sure you've got extra space for them to store the honey in. So that's why it's June during June or July flow. Very good. And that is very important. You can pick 2 on that one. Okay, good. All right, so I think we'll buzz through the slides from this week and start seeing what you have for questions. You bet.
So you talked about during the summer months or when they're really ramping up, you check them every 1 to 2 weeks. And I just want to make sure I understand the logic correctly. If you don't, and they start to produce more honey than they should, or they're storing more honey than they should.
Yep.
The colony will swarm. And that's the reason why you want to check it frequently so they're not taking too much honey.
That's one of the reasons. Yeah, and in that time of year, in June and July, that's probably the most important reason, so that they don't run out of room and end up swarming. But other times of the year, you still want to be checking them 1 to 2 weeks because there are other things that can be going on. In the fall and in the spring, they could be running out of food. Instead of running out of space, you could be running out of food. But probably the most, what am I trying to say? The most intense time, the time of year when you're going to want to check them most frequently is like right before that June flow and during it, just because they can fill it up so fast.
Right. Yeah. It's improper to say that they're making too much honey because the bees allow honey to make as much as they can. So you just need to provide this space for them to store it. Okay. You can't say, okay, this is getting full, you can't make anymore. Well, we don't know that. Well, if you were to be late, it seems like that's the one that's most acceptable. Because the real problem is they're going to swarm and you're going to lose some of your colony.
Yeah.
Right. So that if you were going to miss a check, that would be the best one too. That sounds like to me. Am I understanding the logic?
I'm understanding it backwards. You would not want to miss those checks in June, because if you do, you're going to lose half of the bees, and that's a real setback. They're not,
Oh, because they wouldn't replenish in enough time.
Right, yeah.
Some of them would already take right. Okay. So then everything's set back instead of an extra box or two more honey. The ideal thing is to have as many bees as you can, right? Getting as much nectar during that time when the plants are flowering. There's a delicate dance right in that time period. where you don't want to have too many boxes on. That also will cause them to swarm because there's too much room and it's overwhelming. Okay. They can't cope. And it's too big. We don't have it. So if you are nervous about being able to do it, to check them during that time period, then put a box on. Put a super on. It's better to have the super on than need it and not have it on.
Mhm.
Okay. Because if there's a or the honey flow, nectar flow on the flowers, one of those boxes, they can kill that whole thing up. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, you don't know the time either. It isn't like, okay, June 18th, that's when they're gonna start filling it. It all depends on what's flowering, but it's surprising because when I check mine, the raw check, there's nothing in the honey box, and there's nothing in the honey box the next week. Next week, there's nothing in the honey box, and then the next week, it's full, and they're wanting more space. What did you guys do? Yeah, so that's the purpose of kind of checking all the time. Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
So what you would not do in the first thing as you're starting out is put 2 deep boxes and 2 supers on it, and have a package of bees in there, because they will just lay there the rest of the summer and not do anything.
Well, and you can give them too much space in that they can't patrol it, police it. So ants can get in there. There's not enough bees to go, chase them out or to guard it. Other pests, small hive beetles and things like that can get in there. So you can give them too much space, but it depends on the time of year. So like Dave is saying, you wouldn't want to put a bunch of boxes on early in the spring because again, that's when the bees are at their lowest population. They don't have enough to take care of all of that space.
There's no honey in there. There's no net. Nothing. But there's bees. Looking at the other 2 hives that you ever could popping out. The space match population.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the other thing to consider, like in your question about if the swarm left and half of the bees go. So you've only got half the number of bees left in the hive to continue to make honey. But one of the weird things is a hive of 60,000 bees will make way more honey than 2 hives of 30,000 bees. I don't know what it is or why it is, but so when you lose half of your bees, you don't have half of the honey making capacity with the bees that are remaining. You've got less than half. So that's another reason you really don't want to see them go in the middle of the year. Yeah.
So when they're producing honey, and you're saying you could fill up a box in basically a week, how often roughly are you fixing up the box? You take the box and off. You just keep adding more on?
Yeah.
It's possible you could take them off, and if you're going to get the honey out, well, then you're taking honey out of one box, you're making a mess. So generally, we wait till the end of the season, take off all 2 or 3 at one time and make a honey mess.
For the most part, yeah, through the summer, yeah. You can harvest several times a year if you want to, but yeah, summer or fall. Yeah, what most people are doing these days is trying to harvest honey around the 1st of August and then check for mites. And then if they need to, treat, because a lot of the mite treatments are temperature sensitive. And so if you're doing it at the end of August, September might get too cold and you don't get a good mite treatment. Oh, yeah, no, they're on the bees. No.
You're better off storing the honey on the hive with the bees than you are taking it off and trying to store it outside the
Yeah. Yeah, that's one good reason to leave it on the bees is they can take care of it. Whereas if you put it in your garage, ants or whatever are going to get into it. If you take it and harvest it, I know Justin Englehart he harvests as soon as he's got some boxes full. And
Pretty sweet setup or did, where they were able to harvest one box at a time.
yeah, one box at a time. And
Orders for,
he was hand cranking them out in his basement, and just was doing it all of the time. So you absolutely can do it frequently if you want. Some, you know, if you've got 1 or 2 hives, you might harvest a frame or 2 every so often, and that's all you need or all you want. So you definitely can do it that way. Yeah.
or another point with that, when we talk about buying hive equipment, you know, you could get 2 deep boxes for your bees to be in, and then another 20 boxes for on top. Or then all of a sudden, if the bees are making a lot of honey, and you check it, you're gonna need another box. You don't have time to wait another 3 days before you get down or get one ordered, so it's a good thing to always have, you know, an extra couple boxes besides what you get in a kitty.
Yep.
It takes longer to build frames than you think.
Okay, so if you went through the slides beforehand, you were warned. We're all gonna talk about ourselves. So I'll take the first bullet and I'll go first. So some of my other hobbies are I like to take pictures, into photography, and my wife and I like to travel to national parks. So this is a picture my wife took of me and the Grand Tetons trying to get a shot of the mountains through the morning fog. This is Grafton Ghost Town in Arizona. And then there's just one of my favorite bee pictures that I've taken. And we'll talk a little bit about location and where you're planning on putting your hives. So I grew up on a farm between Willis and Ponca, Nebraska, and moved into Sioux City, I don't know, 25 years ago, and kind of always missed being outside. And so I got into gardening, and of course the photography, I got into flower gardening, so I had something to take pictures of, and vegetable gardening, and I'd always been interested in bees. So in about 2008, 2007, I heard about colony collapse disorder. And I have to admit, my first thought was, you know, maybe I could get bees and stick them in a hive and put them out on my acreage. I bought 5.5 acres from my mom and dad before they retired. I thought, you know, I'll save the bees. I'll put them out there and they can do their thing. And because I was a little bit freaked out about getting my hands in them and dealing with them all the time. But I took a beginning beekeeping class at University of Nebraska and learned that you can't just stick them in there and, you know, set it and forget it. You've got to pay attention to them. But I did want to stick to like as natural or as chemical free as I could. And so my dad and I built these 2 hives. They're called a top bar hive. I happened to build them the same width as the Langstroth hive, but these are the frames that go in them. And the bees just follow that and build the comb straight down. And when you've got a bunch of these pushed together, you take the top off and pull a frame out, and you're only exposing a small amount of bees. I thought it was more natural, more towards organic, made more sense. And then there they are out at my acreage. So after a few years of that, I like the top bar hives, but they can be a little bit more work. They're a little trickier. And I decided to get into more standard equipment. So these are some of my hives now. And these are all 8-frame mediums. I have some issues with my back, so I don't like lifting 10-frame deeps if I don't have to. So mine are all 8-frame mediums, top to bottom. And I mean, I like the bees. I like the bee classes or the bee meetings and the interactions. Kind of some of the reasons that I stick with it and what keeps me motivated. So there's the hives, middle of the summer 2009. And there's the same 2 hives, January 1st, 2010. Do you see this little stick right here? That's the top of that tree. So my hives were under 8 feet of snow that first year. So location, location, location. I thought that windbreak was going to be perfect. Hindsight being 2020. This year we got another snowdrift there, and it hasn't been a snowdrift like that since. 2009, 2010. No, they did not. I went out with a long fiberglass pole and found them, and dug down to them and lifted them up out of there. It was like lifting a coffin out of the ground, and relocated them. And then come spring, I put them back out at the acreage, and 2 weeks later they died. So something happened when I moved them. I still don't know what. So learn from my mistakes, I guess. And I've made plenty of them, so I've been there. So I'd like you guys to come up. You don't have to come up here if you don't want to, but for the Zoom recording, for the other people, if you're willing to, come up so the microphone picks you up. Just tell us kind of why you want to get into beekeeping, a little bit about yourself, and then where you're thinking about putting your hives. And if you don't want to at all, you don't have to. If you want to do it in your chair, that's fine too. So, anybody want to step up first? All right.
My name is Adam Vega. Been in Sioux City for just over 10 years now. Originally grew up outside Chicago. A suburban city kid all my life, and I can sympathize with the colony collapse thoughts that you had. That's kind of what put my mind on this. Thinking that, I understand it's happening, and thinking that there's something little that I could do to maybe do something about it. So essentially that's why I'm here. I live in town, so I'm thinking of either trying to figure out a way to put hives in my backyard, behind my garage, or my real job is working for Mid-American Energy down at the coal plants, and maybe thinking about talking to the plant manager, see if he'll let me put them out there. There's plenty of room and nobody to bother him. So. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I believe it.
I'm Rick Samuelson. I'm originally from Minnesota. Came down here to go to college and stuck around. So my wife and I bought an acreage, about a 10.5 acreage last August. And we're always interested in being outdoors. She likes horses and things like that. So obviously we have a huge pasture that's full of clover and all kinds of things. And I thought, that's perfect. Plus I homebrew. So if I can make meat in the process, it would be even better. So yeah, just down the hill, there's a nice grove of trees that overlooks the pasture. I thought that would be a perfect place for a hive. So just here looking for some info, and we can make it happen. 10.5 acres. Yep. Yep. I'd say about 5 of it. Well, the 5 front acres is all pasture. And then the back portion is probably, of that portion, there's probably 1/3 of it that would be considered grassland pasture. And then the other 2/3 of it would be woodland. So we would be, the pasture would be on the west side of the property. From the city. It would be on the north, we'd be just north of Stone Park, across the county line into Plymouth. So, and then on the other side of us, it's all cow pasture. So, I mean, we can put hives up there and let them run. Yeah, So there's somebody on the corner, we're on West Loop Road, and somebody on the corner of K18 and West Loop Road that has 3 hives. So clearly it's happening down there, but we'd be up further up on the hill and have more garden. We're putting in fruit trees, all that kind of stuff. So there'd be plenty of stuff for them to harvest. So, yep.
Hey, my name is Allie. I'm originally from Kalamazoo, Michigan. I played volleyball and basketball at the University of Nebraska. Give away my height a little bit. Why bees? I don't really know. My husband tells me that I need a hobby. We live out in the country. We've got 2 little kids. We do a lot of gardening. I just got into doing sourdough. So I'm like, why not bees? So yeah, we absolutely love outdoors. We do a lot of hunting and fishing. So yeah, I just was like super interested in it. I've always kind of been interested in it. I love honey. So I was like, I might as well learn how to do it. So, yep. Oh, not me. Not me. Maybe. But
From tall to short. My name's Amy Wadley, and I'm from Fonda, Iowa, which is just a small town, and I've been in Lamar's, Iowa for probably more than 20 years. We left it for a few years for my daughter had some health stuff, but we're back, and now for 3 years now we've been on an acreage. We're on 5 acres, and we have chickens and goats and a dog and cats and I guess basically I buy honey all the time from like probably people like you guys. And I guess honestly, I just like to know where my food comes from and I like it to be good and healthy and clean. And um, I don't know, I guess that's really my main reason. I guess why I'm here just to learn. Um, I think so we are on an acreage, we don't have a lot of trees, so that would be my main thing, flowers, and we have trees, but not like what you're talking about, you know? Um, Yeah, I think that's it. I have a lot of kids that could maybe help. I have 6 kids. Um, one's in college, one's older, but currently living with us with 2 grandbabies. So just a lot going on. So I think that's another part of me. Like, I don't know. That's why I'm happy to learn about the time commitment and all that. Cause I don't know. Yeah. 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 I think like a part of my concern, like, I think it's might be a good opportunity, but then it's just learning about the safety and like you said, the bee stings and like things like that. I don't know, like mean bees versus nice bees, if that's a thing. I don't know.
It happens,
Yeah.
but it's not real common. But yeah.
But like I've also heard that like when you get stung by a bee, like it can be good for you, like healthy. I don't know.
Yeah,
I take it if that was the case. But
Yeah. Yeah, well, maybe we'll get into some of that, but yes, there are useful things about these stings. Yeah. So, Dean and Dave, a couple of people here didn't meet you last time, and then I didn't get anything recorded. So, do you want to come up and talk to you tonight? That would be awesome.
Well, my name's Dean Johnson. I live on 3 acres between Merrill and Westfield. We started bees. I just looked in my first book and it was 2015. We kind of got interested in it and got bees 2016. So we're going on 8 years now, which has been real exciting. My wife sells the honey and I deal with the bees. I enjoy sharing with people what we have and helping with the classes and stuff like that. Put on presentations at Plymouth County Fair. We're doing the garden show here in a couple weeks on a Monday night. But I was really interested in getting bees to pollinate our big garden.
And then we got a whole bunch of honey that first year. And what do you do with all this? So then it was like, have to find a way to sell the honey and get rid of that and keep increasing the bees. So right now, got like 20, 21 hives that we take care of. And they were all alive, I think, when I kind of peeked in the boxes here. Take care of the bees at Dorothy Pico Nature Center too. So there'll be new bees in there this spring once I get some that I can pull out of my boxes and stuff. So it's been real interesting, and getting to meet people is a big thing too.
We usually have a dead hive that you bring in. He doesn't have any dead hives this year.
Well, Phil said he had some.
Yeah, Phil's got some.
Well, we still got, a neighbor that goes through in February.
My name is Dave Gross. My wife and I have a all country estate just north of town up by Hinton. I've been beekeeping about, this will be the 5th year, I think. And then we've had as many as 8 hives, and right now we're nursing about 6. Other than that, it's just the learning about all of the different things having to do with beekeeping, and like somebody mentioned, trying to maintain the population of bees is really the primary concern for us at the time, at this point. So that's what we've been concentrating on. Other than that, that's all I've got.
So this is slightly off topic, but I'm just curious, have you guys ever looked into the sister city program that Sioux City has with the Kosovo cities?
No.
So in Kosovo, it's very common for most even suburban or urban houses to have beehives in the backyard. They're a very agrarian society.
Okay.
And we partnered with a city called Geelong, and I was in the army in the early 2000s, and I served over there in Geelong, and now they come over, and they're looking for ways for us to interact. And I was just curious if you guys have ever looked at doing something like that, or just talking to them, because it truly is like, that's how they get their sugar. That's
Wow.
how they do it. So they have honeybees in their yard.
Sure. No, that's very interesting.
Well, I would share too, that with everybody who comes in for this, for an opportunity, there's one for you. You look to make me. And it isn't just bees and honey, because there's a whole lot of other aspects with pollination or raising queens or dealing with wax or photography and all these different aspects of it. I usually start out with a presentation, there's bees in a honey. All of a sudden, how about this, that question, get going.
That
Yeah.
does happen. Justin Englehart made a contact with some foreign exchange students came through, and then they went home and got really excited about it, came back, made contact, and then the State Department sent Justin to Africa with them for about 2 weeks.
I'm on the sister city committee for that city, and like I said, I served over there, and now there's been a recent group that has recently been over there, so there's a lot of contact over there.
Sure.
I'd
That's
just be
cool.
curious if that's
It certainly is open, and I don't know if any beekeeper that I know that would not participate in a success like that.
Yeah,
We would
cool.
send them right to Dean's house.
Okay. So I'll run through the slides from tonight and maybe kind of quiz you a little bit and see if, it stirs up anything you had questions about or I didn't go in too deep enough. The first thing is, that the bees are a social insect, kind of like ants, and that there's, they go through different jobs as they age, and they've got a pretty sophisticated situation that most insects and most animals don't even compare to. So this waggle dance, if you get out to like the Dorothy Pico Nature Center when there's bees or Adams Homestead, a lot of times you can see them doing this on the frame. It doesn't have to be in a dark hive, and the bee runs up at an angle and wiggles, and then she'll turn around and she'll give some sample of the nectar to the bees that are watching her. And then she'll do the exact same line again, and she'll turn the other direction. She just keeps doing that over and over again and gives a little sample to anybody who's interested. So, what's cool is there's a bunch of bees in there doing this dance. And so the bees that are looking for a place to go out and forage can sample from several different dancing bees, and they can figure out which one's the sweetest and is the closest, and kind of weigh, do I want to fly 4 miles for this one, or is this one that's a mile away sweet enough to make it worthwhile? So, I mean, they can make an educated decision. And that's, yeah. So if the nectar is sweeter, it's less work for them to turn it into honey. I don't know if, other than the sweetness in the nectar, I don't know if they would have another reason to prefer it. But distance is definitely important, because, like I said, if it's a quarter of a mile away and it's just as sweet as something that's 3 miles away, they're going to go to the one that's closer. And distance might be the biggest factor. One, so I don't know how it.
So does that make the honey taste a certain way versus like if I get honey from this person versus this person?
Yes.
I'm saying this bee's gonna go out and get from daisies, this one's going to go out and get from dandelions, and this one's going to come from the apple blossom. So the bees are going to different ones. Not all of them. The same bee will go to the same type of plant. And then come back and bring the nectar back, and it might go to something else. But they don't mix it all up.
Oh, wow, that's big.
Right. The flavor will change on the variety of flowers that are in bloom.
And one of the neat things about that is the way that the plants and the bees co-evolved. That's a benefit to the plants, that a bee is specific on what she forages on. So when a bee goes from an apple blossom to an apple blossom to an apple blossom, she's cross-pollinating the apples. If she went from an apple blossom to a clover blossom, they don't cross-pollinate. So, the fact that the bees stay specific to one plant at a time is a huge benefit to the plants. It's pretty amazing the way it ended up like that. But yeah, you'll have different bees going to different nectar sources. And then, that foraging bee comes back to the hive and unloads the nectar to a house bee. And the house bee takes it and finds a cell to put it in. And that house bee generally will find a cell that's got the same kind of nectar in it. So you end up with areas or parts of frames that have a specific kind of honey in it. Don't know why they do that, but that's another interesting thing. But yeah. So any questions on the waggle dance or communication or any of that?
I just mentioned that happens in total darkness.
Yeah.
Inside the hive.
Yeah.
So it's the frequency, the vibration, the direction is important, and then there's also pheromones involved.
Yep. And then the length, the longer the bee does it, that represents how long you fly in that
When
direction.
you pull a frame out to look at it, you will notice that it's happening there. They won't stop. They won't stop doing that. They will continue to do
The waggle dance.
while you're
Yep.
watching. It's fascinating. It's unbelievable.
Does that make them angry that you get in there?
Yeah.
Not like you think, not like you would think it would.
Because like you said, the bees have different jobs, at different ages. Some of them are busy feeding the young larvae and stuff. Some of them are working with the pollen. Some of them are working with the honey. Some that are getting ready to guard the door or do ventilation, they might be more aggressive and be the guard bees to affect the hive, so different stages of age, they have job. So they aren't all gonna swarm that yet, because most of them are breeding. You need to start these
So I changed the wording on this a little bit today. So the hive is usually what we refer to like the equipment. The wooden box that they're in is technically the hive, and then the colony are the bees that go in it. And the colony is the one queen and the few thousand drones and thousands of female worker bees. Yeah, and so then we get into a little bit of the role of each, what do you call it, caste of bees? Am I saying that right? There's typically one queen per hive, but there can be exceptions. People who have gone looking say that they might, 20% of the time, they might find a second queen in the hive. Usually when they raise a new queen, that new queen will kill the old one if she's still there, but there are situations where they're just not aggressive towards the old one, and she's allowed to continue to do what she can. The worker bees will live 4 to 6 weeks. In the summer when they're working, they're kind of burning themselves out in 4 to 6 weeks. Now the queen, on the other hand, can live years. Yep. So when you pull a frame out of the hive, I mean this is so in this picture, those are eggs, and yep, that's an egg, that's an egg, and they're down in the center of all of those little tiny cells. Yep. They are small, yes. Eggs are pretty hard to see if you got the sun over your shoulder and hold the frame just right, and you got the right glasses on for some of us, or a magnifying glass sometimes. But yeah, eggs can be pretty hard to see. And it's kind of one of those things like once you see them, then you see them all over the place for a while. But yeah, it takes a little bit. And we've already talked about the queen can control whether she fertilizes the egg when she lays it. And so somebody explained to me then what determines if the queen's going to lay a drone or a worker. Any of you remember that? What clues are into I should lay a fertilized egg in this one? Size of the cell. Yep, size of the cell that she's laying it in. Because drones are bigger. If she lays a drone egg in a worker cell, the bees will add some wax and expand it. It's not big enough around, they can't change that, but they'll make it longer. And sometimes you'll find a queen that's laying drones and it looks like bullets on the hive because they've expanded those. A drone is the male bee. Yep. So a drone is unfertilized, and a worker comes from a fertilized egg. The worker, the female, comes from a fertilized egg. Anybody, either of you two, ever been stung by a queen? Only heard of like one person, and it was because he was working with queens and had pinched one, and another one stung him there. Pretty rare. A lot of times, like we mark our queens so we know what year they came from, and so they're easier to find. If you're serious about it, you need to learn how to pick them up. The way to learn how to pick up bees is to pick up drones, because the drones can't sting you. And if you squeeze them too hard, they vibrate. It's really weird. So you can practice picking up bees by picking up drones, and then safer when you go to pick up a queen.
So they're obviously larger, but what other indicators are there to develop queens? I saw the pictures that are probably on the slides. They seem to have a darker bottom of the abdomen.
That depends on the queen or the race or strain of bees. But like in this one, you can see this area is bigger and it's bald, whereas on the worker bee, it's got some hair. There's not as much there, but you can see. So when I'm looking at a whole frame and I'm trying to spot a queen, the light shining off of that round bald spot is usually the first thing that keys it in.
Did you say that so then the worker bees are the ones that, because sometimes there's two queens and they kill off the one?
Sometimes there's two queens. Usually the new queen will kill off the old one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, like, how does the queen become the queen?
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, because they're both female, right? The worker bees are female, the queen bee is female. Why is she so different? Somebody else remember it, or have we got into that? I'm not even sure if it's in the text. So to speak, they'll select a larva. Yeah.
Royal jelly that they give them.
Yeah.
Instead of mixing in, later on they'll mix in pollen and nectar, but they give a queen royal jelly the whole way through so she can develop her reproductive.
Exactly. Yep. So a normal worker bee is fed royal jelly for about 2.5 days, and then it switches over to royal jelly, honey, and pollen, a mixture. A queen is fed nothing but royal jelly all the way through. And something about that diet will allow the queen to develop functioning ovaries and all of these capabilities.
Only one laying.
Yes, under
And
normal.
is her life different than the
Yeah,
rest of them?
it is. Couple of years. I mean, it used to be they'd say a queen can live up to 6 years. Now they're recommending that you replace your queens every year because they're not as good as they used to be. But I've got one, if it's still the same queen, that will be 2 years old this summer. And she's marked, so I'll know if she's still in there and it's marked, I'll know it's a 2-year-old queen. Yeah, I think it'll be 2, not 3. But so yeah, the queen definitely lives a lot longer than the rest of them. Yeah. Yeah, she's definitely exposed to fewer risks than the worker bees are. Yeah. And then the worker bees again are also female, and they do have ovaries. They can lay eggs, but the queen pheromones suppress that instinct for them to lay. And since they don't have all of the working parts, they can't lay fertilized eggs. So when a worker lays an egg, it's destined to become a drone, and most of those don't even get raised to adulthood. But if something happens to the queen, and there's no queen left, the bees will sense that, and if something goes wrong and they're not able to raise a new one, workers will start laying. It's kind of a last ditch effort, but they're still doomed because they're not going to be able to raise anything but some drones.
All drone cells, and there isn't any fertilized worker bees in there, you have an issue with it all.
So when the drones are hatched, or what do they do?
Emerged, but
Emerge,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
If the females are the workers and they're going out, what are the drones doing?
So the drones don't really do anything in the hive. They actually don't even feed themselves. The worker bees will feed them. The drone's main function is to go out and mate with virgin queens from some other hive, some hive that's further away. Drones are useless. Not useless, but so yeah, that's the other thing. The few drones that are fortunate enough to mate with the queen, the phallus breaks off and the drone dies and falls to the ground. So, and then come fall, they don't raise any queens in the winter, so they don't need the drones. They kick them out and they starve. Or around here, the turkeys will eat them. The turkeys come and know that there's extra drones around the beehives in the fall, so you'll see them. You'll see a cluster of drones hanging on the bottom of the outside of the hive because the bees won't let them back in. Yeah. Drones have it pretty rough. So did anybody find the varroa mite? in this picture? It's not a great picture of a varroa mite, but right there. Yep, that reddish dot on that bee is a varroa mite. Is anybody confused by the drones have a mother but no father? It's pretty unique, and it makes queen mating and genetics and all of that very interesting. But since the drone is coming from an unfertilized egg, it gets all of its genetics from the queen, but it's only 16 chromosomes, whereas the queen herself and the workers that result from a fertilized egg have 32 chromosomes. So within one single hive, so you've got a queen, a laying queen, that she went out on her mating flight, she mated with 20 different drones. So every time she lays a worker bee, she fertilizes that egg from one of those 20 drones. So half of the genes come from the queen, the other half come from the drones. So within one beehive, you've got basically 20 subfamilies. They're all, some of them, if they were fertilized by the same drone, they're true sisters. If they're fertilized by a different drone, they're really half sisters. So there can be like 20 subfamilies within one hive. Sometimes you'll see in one hive, you'll see a lot of different colored bees, some lighter colored ones, some darker colored ones. And that variation is usually coming from the different drones that the queen mated with. So I think, Dean, you already covered it. The queen basically goes out on her mating flight once. She goes on 1 or 2 or 3 mating flights, but once she's done with that, she doesn't go outside of the hive again unless she happens to swarm with the hive, if the hive swarms. So you mentioned that bees can get angry or can get mean. So have you heard about the like what we call a hot hive, where they're always aggressive? Okay, so if you find that, like if you go into a hive and they're aggressive one time, a skunk could have been bothering them the night before, the neighborhood kids were throwing rocks at them, something could have set them off and you weren't there to see it, you don't know why. So you go into a hive and it's aggressive once, it's not a big deal, it happens. If every time you go into the hive they're aggressive and stinging you, then it's more of a temperament, genetics. But the advantage of all of the bees coming from one queen is if you find that queen and get rid of her and replace her with a new queen, in 4 to 6 weeks, what happens to the bees that were in the hive? They work themselves to death and they die. And so all of the bees in the hive now came from the new queen. If that queen's not aggressive, now you've just fixed your problem. You've replaced the aggressive hot queen. So. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is it like a click or is there like you know what I mean? Like some people can even be serious. I don't know. How do you just know right away if they're legit?
Not always. So I'm trying to jump through to that section. Sorry. Yeah. So yeah, the drones can't sting you. Worker bees have a stinger. And like you can see in this picture, it rips the stinger out of the abdomen of the bee because it's barbed. So, and it kind of works its way down in there. So it's a good picture of what's going on there. So yeah, itching and swelling around the site where you get stung is pretty normal. And even that, some people are more sensitive than others. So like when I first was beekeeping, I had kind of a severe local reaction. If I got stung on the arm, I would get a little bit puffy from shoulder to wrist, and that elbow joint would be tight for about 3 days. But the longer I stayed at beekeeping, the less and less sensitive I got. And That's not a real severe local reaction, but it is, a little bit. If you get stung on the right arm and your left leg swells up, that's non-localized, and that's definitely more severe or more of a concern.
Yeah, I don't know.
You see that picture, that stinger?
Yeah, that's
That
why.
little bulb thing, that's where the venom is. So you don't wanna grab that bulb with that stinger, because if you do, you're just gonna squeeze more venom in.
Yep.
So they say take like a sharp, or your knife tool, and scrape it off.
Yeah, by scraping it, you're hopefully pinching it at the skin level and raking it out, as opposed to squeezing the bulb and sticking more venom in. So when you're new and you haven't been stung very often, the quicker you get a stinger out, the better. I've also heard somebody say that, yeah, you don't want to grab it and squeeze the venom in, but if it takes you 30 seconds to find something to scrape it out with, you'd just as well pulled it out.
So more likely if you go to your beehive and you're working and they're more than likely active
Yes.
because the males do nothing.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, just assume every bee you see could sting you. Yeah. So let's move along a little bit here. Okay, so some things to watch out for. So anytime you experience tightness in your chest or have difficulty breathing, that's when you should seek medical attention. This is right off of Mayo Clinic's website. So yeah, it can be potentially life-threatening if you get into the anaphylaxis. It's a small percentage of people that are actually allergic to bees. I mean, like life-threatening allergic, it's like 1%. But I mean, it's worth taking seriously. So skin reaction, including hives, itching, flushed or pale skin. I mean, that's getting more severe. Difficulty breathing, swelling of the throat or tongue, weak, rapid pulse, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, dizziness or fainting, loss of consciousness. And the more combinations of these you have, obviously, the more severe it is. The other thing is, if you have a serious reaction, you've got a 25 to 65% higher chance of going into anaphylaxis than next time. So yeah, it's worth taking seriously, but it's not. There just aren't that many people that are that allergic. Give me 1 second here. Okay, so this is a test EpiPen. So EpiPen is what somebody who's in anaphylaxis needs. It opens up the sort of search and breathe. You don't want to give it to somebody unless they really, really need it. But when I got into beekeeping, I wasn't sure if I was going to be allergic, and I got an EpiPen. I went to my doctor and told him I'm becoming a beekeeper, so I got a prescription for it. It expired, and I thought, I don't need to get that anymore. But I do a lot of these classes, go to different beekeepers, beehives, and have people out to my hives. I'm around people who I don't know if they're allergic or not, and sometimes they don't know. So I always keep the EpiPen around. They're kind of pricey, but this is a test one to show you how to use it. So there's this thing on this end that you pull off, and you're supposed to do it in the thigh, but I'll just do it here. If you don't hit it hard enough, there, I hit it hard enough that it went. So you need to do it enough that the needle pops out. That's supposed to simulate the needle popping out. To reset this, you just squeeze it, push it back in. So I'm going to pass that around, and you can play with it. Make sure you get a feel for how to use it. You don't want to learn how to use it in an emergency. So learn now. You got to pull the blue thing off first. So that locks it. And the real one's got a similar lock on that end. Okay, so EpiPen, yeah, let me get back to where we were. Okay, we went through genes and mating. So any questions on mating or genes or any of that? And this is a picture that you were asking about earlier. So yeah, the queen head to tail is quite a bit longer than a worker. That's one way you can spot her. Another way is when the queen walks across the frame, the bees move around her differently than they do other bees. So sometimes you'll spot her because you notice that different movement. And then a lot of times the bees will turn and face her. There'll be a circle of bees around her too. Worker bee, pretty similar shape to a queen, but smaller, but they've got more hair, especially on that area. This, to me, the worker bee should be a little more pointed than this drawing, because that's a lot of times how you'll spot drones is their tail is really flat compared to a worker bee. And their eyes are huge compared to the worker bee or the queen. And they've still got the hair. So we did cover all that. Okay, so yeah, the vast majority of the bees in the hive are the worker bees. So the ones that can sting you. So yeah, when you see a bee, that's most likely what it's going to be. Oh yeah, yep, they'll land on you and not sting you. Most of the time they'll, yeah. Yep. Yep, they will land on you to warm up. Yep. Yeah.
Well, I just feel like, are there some things that they don't like, you know, like.
It's more like they do
birds,
like,
if
so
you're-
they're after perfume or smoke or soap and shampoo and stuff.
Shampoo and perfume.
Donna and I both put hair conditioner on. It's not a concern. But for her, they get caught up. Scent free, it's just the.
I feel like it's not the sting or the, it's bugs.
No, I know.
Crawling is, you know what I mean? Like, if one
Well,
will land on me and like, we're good.
We're
I'm good, but-
we're grown up taught that when something creepy crawly gets on you,
Yeah,
you shake, you get rid of it, and you, yeah, and you don't touch it any more than you have to. Yes, don't. If you swat at a bee, they're attracted to the motion, and they're more likely to go to that hand and sting.
Other guard bees that are in there too, we'll
Yeah.
see that.
Yeah. Yep. So don't swat at them. But yeah, you're right.
We tell people in our yard,
The faster I go, the faster they go.
be still, put your hands over your nose and mouth and just breathe slow. Because they're attracted to that breath, they can't smell that fear pheromone. You just zen out.
So somebody tell me what are some of the jobs that worker bees do? I mean, we've talked a lot about them going out and foraging, but what else do they do? Anybody remember? There's bees, yep. And there's even like some subdivisions I probably don't have in here, but there's like caretaker bees that find the dead bees and haul them out of the hive, you know, so that they don't build up and become a problem inside the hive. What about regressing duties? Can they go backwards? Yep. If they have to, they can go back and do something they used to do when they were younger. The example I used in here is, you know, they might be able to go back and start feeding brood, but they're not going to be as efficient at it as they were when they were younger and it was age appropriate. So one of the things about worker bees is they have wax glands and pollen baskets, and can't think of the other gland. Somebody help me out. Royal jelly gland. So queens don't have those, drones don't have those. I found this picture today, just happened to see it, Facebook served it up to me. And so these are flakes of wax that are coming off of the underside of that bee's abdomen. And there's flakes of wax on this one. I think there's probably some on those, but I've never seen a picture that good of, the wax coming off. So the bees will take those flakes of wax and they chew them and they stick them together and they bend them and they make the honeycomb out of it. They make the wax comb out of it.
And that's all wait for age determined too, because it's a certain day in their lifetime that they're making that wax. That they only make wax for maybe 2 days, and then the ones that are behind them take turns, so they move on to another job.
Yep. Yep.
Just to give you an idea, that little bit wax scale right there, it takes 450,000 of those little scales to make 1 pound. So you see the energy reserve.
Yep.
Needed.
Yep. If anybody sees something that we didn't get into or that you need clarification on, just let me know.
You know what the wealth ratio is? There's 2 times as many foreigner bees as there are guard bees or something like that.
That is a very good question. No, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I don't think I have an idea. I'm trying to think, well, they live 4 to 6 weeks, but I've never seen anything that says they're a nurse bee for a week, they're a house bee for a week. I don't know. Yeah, yeah, okay. I might have to research that because no, I've never thought about that before. Okay. So this is something that maybe gets a little more important later on. I don't go into a lot of detail here, but they all start out as an egg. The queen, the worker, the drone, they all start out as an egg. They're an egg for 3 days. And then things change a little bit. And it's always easiest for me to remember the stages of a worker because it's 3 days as an egg. You double that, it's 6 days as a larva. You double that, and it's 12 days as a pupa. So a pupa is when the cell is covered and they're developing under that covered wax cell. They actually spin a little cocoon and kind of like go through the same process a butterfly would, pupa stage. Queens are a little bit quicker and drones are a little bit longer. And we'll learn later that varroa mites prefer the drone cells. Since the drones are in those cells a couple days longer, that's a couple more days for the varroa mite to reproduce because the varroa mite only reproduce inside of capped brood cells. Anybody see the 2 eggs? Right there. There's 2 eggs in that one, whereas all the rest of them only have 1. And this one's a little bit off to the side. So later you'll probably see someone, or you'll probably get freaked out because somebody tells you there's more than 1 egg in that cell, you've got a drone laying worker. This is a new inexperienced queen, and they will lay multiple eggs per cell once in a while. Looks like maybe she missed one here, and this one's a little bit off. This, I know from taking this picture that this was a pretty new queen, had only been in the hive a week or less. When they're talking about laying workers and multiple eggs per cell, you're probably going to see a dozen eggs per cell, not 2 or 3. There's a big difference. So don't freak out when you see a couple of eggs per cell. This is, I wish this was my picture, but it's not. This is a really good picture of healthy larvae. There's a lot of royal jelly around all of these, and they're white and they're shiny. And it's something that comes with experience, but when you look at a frame like this, you can tell this whole hive is doing really, really well, or they wouldn't have had the resources to take such good care of these larvae. So this is a good one to try and remember. Just the nectar and the pollen that they're bringing in. Yeah. I mean, it's probably a combination of things. There's enough bees that they can take care of all this brood really well. And there's enough honey in the hive or nectar coming in and pollen coming in. Yeah. Good question though. talked about that. Yep.
Hey, you saw in the previous slide, you will see in your hive the larva that we just saw. You will also see in the hive. Next slide, you will not see. You will not see that either. That's happening in the cell. It's covered. It's covered with black.
Yeah. Yeah, this is, somebody has cut this down from the side, or maybe even there's a piece of plexiglass on here or something. So yeah, you won't get to see that. You can or you might sometimes take a capping off and pull a developing larva out. They call this the purple-eyed larva stage. There's different stages that scientists know, how old it is based on what it looks like. But they basically go from this white, shiny, worm-looking thing to this, to the brown and yellow hairy bee that you're used to seeing. And some people are kind of surprised by this, but once the bee has emerged from that cell, they don't get bigger. They develop inside of that cell. The queen is a bit of an exception. After the queen mates, her abdomen does get bigger. But for the other bees, they don't change once they've emerged from that cell. All right, so let's see if this will play. There's no audio here. So there's a brood frame coming out of one of my hives, and a brood frame. So brood is the baby bees. So later on, we'll have looked at enough pictures that you'll be used to seeing that deep frame there. Well, this is actually this pattern is usually what you'll see. This was all brood. This is a little bit different because all of the brood's on the bottom of that frame, and it doesn't quite have the same pattern. Remember, I said I use all 8 frame mediums. So this is a not as deep as that frame. And here's another box down below. And this brood nest goes between both boxes. So this frame looks a little different than what you might be used to seeing or get used to seeing. And that's because of the fact it's smaller, but the brood frame is still covering multiple boxes. So all of these cells down here are capped brood cells. So there's a larva, a pupa under there. Okay. You can't see the detail yet, but all of these are larvae, the little white, shiny, worm-looking things. This side doesn't have any capped brood. And again, you can't see the detail, but I can tell this is all white larvae in the cells there. But there's nothing capped on this side. It's not that old. It's not as old as the other side. Now you can start to see a little bit of the difference. There's some white, shiny larvae. There's capped brood. That's a drone right there. See the round butt? And that's a worker bee that's feeding it. There's a worker bee. There's again the difference in the shape of the butt. All of these are capped larvae. There's some openings in here that don't have anything in them. You'll see some of those. This frame's got maybe a little more open cells than normal. So those bees are sticking their head in, either feeding young larvae or pulling nectar or honey out of those cells. Just the larva, because right, they can't feed an egg, and then the pupa is under a capping, and they typically don't remove that cap. So yep, they're not eating when they're in that pupa stage. Oh, it's I don't have the figures here, but I figured it out somewhere because they'll tell you, you know, from the time the egg hatches until the cell is capped, they get fed so many times. And I did the math, and it's about every 20 minutes, yeah, or less. So it's they get attention a lot. So there's some good ones. You can see those are pretty good sized white shiny larvae, and then those are the capped ones, the pupa. Okay. Now, if I can get it to move on. There we go. Okay, so we talked about stings already. Anybody have any questions on that? Has everybody been stung? Do you all know how you react? I know you've been stung. You're not sure. I'm thinking. How about you guys? Okay. And bees and wasps are different. I mean, different enough. I've heard of beekeepers who are allergic to wasp stings, not because they're beekeepers, just coincidentally. So they're not close enough that you could say you're going to be okay with bees since you've been stung by a wasp, rather. Okay. Okay, so Phil is going to talk a little bit about clubs, but do you guys want to take a break first? We've been at it quite a while. Or do you want to just keep on going? Good? Okay. I don't, but I'm recording it for someone who couldn't be here. Yeah, yep, you got it.
I would do that. Dave, you're gonna zoom in on me so I'm looking good, buddy? You're a good man. My name is Feb8. I'm also a beekeeper. I'm an addict, just like the rest of them in here. Bees are wonderful, absolutely wonderful. One of the other things that, in my opinion, is wonderful are beekeepers. And so finding someone that you can work with, or more than someone that you can work with, is an outstanding thing. Iowa, Nebraska, good. Iowa? Okay, so no South Dakotans. South Dakota has no state beekeeping association, so you can just set that aside. Nebraska, Omaha Beekeepers, Omaha Bee Club, outstanding group, outstanding group. I think their dues are 25 a year. They're doing phenomenal things. So if you're a Facebook person, look them up, the Omaha Bee Club, if you're not already in contact with them. Tremendous group. Donna, would you agree? They're, yep, they're stellar. Even though I'm South Dakota, I belong to them because they're that good. Or, yeah, Nebraska, absolutely. Iowa, there is a group called the Siouxland Area Beekeepers. Or Siouxland Beekeepers. It's the Sioux Falls area. I always get that. The Siouxland Beekeepers. Tremendous group. They have an outstanding board. They've got a vice president who is a 100% go-getter. That'd be me. That'd be me. Former board member. Dave, you're a former board member, aren't you? Nope, I'm saying you were. John, kind of the Sioux City constituent, right? At large, yeah. Rogue. I would really encourage you to get involved with them. We just changed our dues to $20 for individual, $30 for a family. We meet monthly, except for November and December. We meet in Sioux Center at the public library. We'll be meeting on Thursdays right now because they are under construction there. And our goal is to have a topic specific for you ahead of time. So we know that in February, we're going to be talking about wax products. In March, we're going to be talking about pollinator plots and what seeds that you can have, what you can grow and develop. And on that note, the Great Plains Master Beekeepers out of UNL is giving a free webinar tomorrow night on planting for pollinator plots. So if you want more information on that, it'll be posted on my Facebook group called Birdsong Bees. And no, I won't solicit you for that one. But what I'm getting at is find these connections because you'll start getting in on all kinds of opportunities. You've got people to ask questions. You've got places to go. I know that Dean in the past has a hive dive out in his yard, no charge, right, Dean? Come in, let's get in there. That's something that we're doing in our yard this year. We've built up enough to be doing that as well. the free webinars that are available because you now have these connections that are outstanding. Absolutely outstanding. Iowa Honey Producers is a tremendous organization. Their dues are $30 a year, and they put on a fantastic conference. Just this last one, just what was that, November, right? Wow, what a conference. Big name speakers. But at the same time, you've got somebody who's a beginning beekeeper standing next to a massive commercial, well, not physically massive, but a massively commercial producer, and they're talking bees level across the board. I don't think I've ever had anybody snub me or snob me at any of these. You guys ever experienced where you're shut out as a beekeeper? We're a pretty welcoming crew. What else would you like to know? No, that's all right.
Oh,
Facebook.
If you're not already on Suman Beekeepers group, Facebook, find the group and ask them. And it's Suman Beekeepers group. There's a
Correct.
page or something that doesn't get any activity. And then you have to answer questions. You don't have to get them right.
You can say, I don't know for all three of them.
But some of the admins, if you don't take time to answer the questions, they don't let you through because they think it's spam. So answer the questions.
Yeah. Give an answer.
But there's a lot of activity on Suman Beekeepers group. Well, especially like weather like we're having right now, all of a sudden it's warm and you can get in hot guys over. All of a sudden you'll see on Facebook, I checked my hives today, they're all alive, or this one's dead. Get a lot of timely information as far as what's going on. As new beekeepers, you don't really know what maybe you should be looking for or what might be going on. Staying on our Facebook group.
I would say with that Facebook group, know who your people are. So that if you're on Facebook and you see me, you see John, you see Dean, you see Dave, you go, okay, those are people in my area. And I say that just because there's a number of things, as you already know, that are on Facebook, that are on YouTube, that are in other areas of the internet that may be not in your best interest to do. So what's happening in Georgia, for somebody who's a first-time beekeeper who knows everything, it's not going to work in South Dakota, Iowa, for somebody who's had bees for a while. Okay, and just so you know, we all text each other. Hey, this is going on in my yard. You know, hey, bees don't fly at 50 degrees. Well, it's 19 degrees outside and mine are flying. John usually tells me my bees are broken. But yeah, find a mentor, find somebody that will work with you. That means that we open up colonies, or we open up the hives and look at colonies of bees and give you hands-on experience. Yep.
But what I do, maybe you want to do it different. And he always has it wrong, so don't follow him.
He's right when he says that. I always do it wrong. I'm a lefty. Anything else, John? Okay.
The meetings are at 7.
Thank you. 7 o'clock.
And we do meet here occasionally.
We try to have a quarterly meeting here, and that's more of a, hey, upcoming calendar, what do we need to do? What do we need to look out for? Definitely.
Do you post those on the same Facebook page?
Yep, I guess posted on Siouxland Beekeepers. Oh, yeah. Well, once you pay your dues to become a Siouxland Beekeeper member, then you get emails from our secretary, Dan, who's outstanding, another South Dakota guy. USD math professor, but we don't hold that against him.
So you share those address.
Will you give those to Dan, to his?
I certainly can. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good idea. So if I've got your email address, I'll send it to Dan. I'll have him email him and ask you if you want to start doing the Facebook blog. I'm not just telling you, but he'll ask you if you don't want it. Anytime there's something going on, whether it's here in Sioux City or up in Sioux Center, if you want to.
You ready? Write this date down. June 8th. June 8th, very important date. Here's why. We're having our field day, Siouxland Beekeepers. And in the morning, we're going to have General Assembly meetings that will address everybody from beginner through advanced. In the afternoon, we'll have breakout sessions, and we have 2 tracks. We have more at the beginning and more of the intermediate advanced. This is another great place to get to know people. It's held in Sioux Center at Dordt University at the Stewardship Ag Center. And if you are following Birds on Bees or Siouxland Beekeepers, you'll see advertisements about that coming up. We're early in the planning stages of it right now, but what we currently have written down on paper and lined up, it's looking good. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with the direction we're taking with it right now.
What'd you say, $25 a year?
For the Siouxland Beekeepers, 24 individual, 34 family. And one of the nice things about us as an organization is if you are a member and you go to the Iowa Honey Producers, we pay your registration. Well, after you paid and submitted your receipt, of course. And our talk right now is that we will reimburse members of our club for going to the field day as well.
Good. Awesome. Thank you. So, also for taking this beginning beekeeping class, you get a free membership to the Iowa Honey Producers Association. So I just have to remember to get the forms to you. And so your first year of Iowa Honey Producers, the membership is free because you're taking a beginning beekeeping class. So that's kind of nice too. So Dean brought some stuff in. We've got a small enough group. Do you want to bring things up here? You want to go back there? All right, let's do that.
There's a lot of stuff back here.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Dave, did you get kicked off?
start out cheap. I had one of these for the long, so you buy it. And immediately, one of the vendors was giving these away, which was great. And the way you can try these, especially for rocks like this one, together, because that under breaking apart, otherwise these frames all have. So there's different ways.
Question right on the quiz, and why you use this, but I actually don't remember, or no. So can you remind me? Yeah, yeah.
Why you use it?
Yeah, I can't remember. I mean, out of the, it was
It was like
biologically, it was the right.
Them or
Yeah.
One of the
those are-
smells the bees put out, what we talk about,
Yeah.
these guard bees,
Mhm.
they'll put out this pheromone that says something's going on here. This isn't good. Everybody come here because we're gonna guard the hive, attack a bear that's coming in.
Okay.
You use a smoker like this, covers up that pheromone scent that the guard bees are putting out.
Do they do that often, or is that something you should be prepared for?
It depends on the bees too. As we said, aggressive bees, you might want to use this a whole lot more. If you got calm bees and you open up your hive and nobody moves at all, you don't even have to use it. And that's kind of what the genetics of bees, we kind of look for a queen that's going to have bees that are kind of calm.
So the video that I played where it pulled the frame up out of the hive,
Yeah.
did you see the bees freak
Yeah.
out?
No.
No. And the bees on the frame just acted like we weren't even there.
Mhm.
I tell people the smoker is kind of like the equivalent of us trying to have a conversation in a bar when a band is playing. That, you know, that communication is all covered up by the background noise and the loud music. The smoke, since bees communicate with smells and pheromones, the smoke is the background noise. It makes it harder for them to communicate, harder for them to freak out and tell the other bees you need to freak out. Yeah.
And on the other hand, you hear sometimes you get more aggressive bees, they'll make more honey than the calm ones that are lazing around. So there's the trade-off there too. This is what I use for my smoker fuel. I use this, I got a torch to light it up. You want to practice with that so you get a nice hot fire. And once your wood is burning or whatever you're using, you can get some green grass and put in here to hold the fire embers from falling out and stuff. It kind of cools the smoke down. I got some burlap pieces that I can put across there to keep the hot smoke off of the bees. You'll just have the white smoky thing covering up the smells.
So hardwood, softwood doesn't matter, really, just whatever.
Pine needles.
Okay.
Dean smoker is the only smoker that smells like barbecue that I'm aware of.
Well,
You smell
mine
it?
might too soon. So got plenty of wood pellets.
Burlap is really easy. I hate the smell, but it's really easy if you, especially if you can find it for free. You roll it up fairly tight. You've got to have one of those torches to light it. So pine needles are free, but they burn hot and fast. So again, you got to put grass in there to keep the heat and the cinders from falling out the smoker spout. And they sell smoker fuel at David's.
They sell anything that they could sell you.
Yeah. So essentially, it's not going to harm the bees no matter what different kinds of fuel you use.
I don't know. You might be able to burn something that would be bad for them.
Okay.
Like
I try to avoid stuff like plywood,
Yeah.
you know, that's got
I mean, we
glue or
got a lot
something,
of-
you know, whatever.
We have a lot of pine trees and red
Yeah.
cedar and that kind of
pine
stuff.
needles are great.
Okay.
So this is something you should have.
Yeah, oh yeah.
You
Yeah.
should have a smoker.
And you don't have to
How-
smoke the heck out of them every time.
Yeah.
But you should always have it in case they get revved up, then you can start smoking and calm them down.
Yeah. How long does that take to get it ready? Like
10
we-
minutes,
once you-
5-10 minutes.
Mhm.
Unless you're in a hurry.
Yep.
15 minutes.
Got it going. You walk over to your hive, then it's out.
Yeah.
Start it up again. You pump this to get air into the thing and it's going good. And then you walk over here and open up your lid and all of a sudden there's no smoke coming out of you.
Yeah.
So it's something to practice with or play with.
So practice before you get your bees. And if you practice with the cigarette lighter, you will buy a torch before you practice the next time. I guarantee it. So
This is my kit that I just carry in my truck all the time. So there's a brush in here. I got this old container that I scrape wax off of some of those frames on the tops or off the bottoms. And I save that up to render it for candles or other things. Here's some queen marking tools. I got a new one because this one got wet and got all swollen up. But I'll get the queen that's on a frame if I see her and can get her run into there like that, push her up to the top, and then take this marking pen and just put a little paint dot on her back, which is helpful for finding them the next time. Some people can just pick them up. I haven't got that talent to do that.
Why do we want to get them?
Why do you want to find them?
Go over to that other one.
Because
and
it's
see if
the
you can
single
remove
most
spotlight.
important bee
Yeah, I
in the
know,
hive.
but I mean, but what do you do once you just want to like,
I know
Is that
she's
an
there,
option?
okay.
but
Or just like lay eyes on her, like there
right,
she is.
which
She's still
most people will say, I want to see my queen. This is the big one. I want to show her off.
You want to
Well,
run this?
when
I'll
you're
go
going
take a
through
look
your
at mine.
hive and you saw that white larva in there, you know the queen's laid an egg there
Yeah.
in the last week or so. So that's kind of the thing you're really looking for. And a queen clip like this is good if you want to pick her off the frame, set her to the side while you go through the rest. You don't have to worry about injuring her or something like that. Not that I use that very often, but sometimes you're trying to catch one.
If your queen does die and you get a new queen, does the colony accept her pretty easily? Or
Sometimes
is it all dependent on?
it depends.
Okay.
And there was a question last week about making queens. Here's a picture that has a bunch of queen cells along the bottom of that frame. So something happened to the queen in this hive and the bees decided we need a new queen. So they started feeding these larvae that royal jelly. And once they're going to cover up the cell after those 9 days or so, then they make an elongated cell, looks like a peanut. So the queen has more room to grow. And we can take that little tiny larva like the bees will use and pick it up out of the cell with a little instrument like that, put it in these cups. This is how they make queens. Take that little larva out, put it in these cups.
That's how we make queens.
That's how we try to.
Bees don't do it
The
that way.
bees can't use the little.
I got the thumbs.
No
No.
thumbs.
Then you can put these bars with all the little tiny larvae in a hive like that nuke box over there with a whole bunch of bees that don't have a queen for the last couple of days. And it's like, we need a queen. We want to make a queen. So they start feeding all these royal jelly and you end up having a bunch of queens that you can use for yourself or sell, or just one more aspect of beekeeping. And some of us raise queens. So you lost a queen, I got one. Where can I find a queen? You know, we get that.
You
all
call
the time
Dean and
too,
say,
for
do you have
some-
any queens, Dean?
Do you continually raise those throughout the summer then?
There's a certain time that's good. You have to have drones.
Yeah.
So right now there's no drones in the hive. The queen's not going to start laying drone eggs till we're going to prepare to swarm or reproduce, you know. So one more aspect of it that we look at. Some people think this is a swarm. That's just a hot hive box. So in the summertime, when it gets 90, 100 degrees, a bunch of the bees will go on the outside of the box. So it controls the temperature a little bit more. Talked about not getting stung. You'll want a jacket or something. I use just a veil like this in the summertime. Long sleeve shirt, short sleeve shirt. It depends on your comfort. And
How often do you get stung?
how often? It depends. If you were messing around with the bees and they were angry, you might get stung. If it's a windy, cold, rainy day or in the dark, you don't want to mess with them because they don't like that. You want to work on a nice, calm, sunny day is the best time. How's that fit?
Fine.
You have issues to see, you know, but it's better than getting a sting in your eye or
Yeah.
your nose and stuff. some people use gloves, some people don't. I've had the case where I generally don't, but this last summer, it's like, was it that hive that was giving me problems or the one over here? So I was wearing my gloves a whole lot more this last summer than I normally do. It's just leather gloves and you can't feel what you're moving stuff around with. When you pick up those frames, you can pick them up with your fingers. Once you get them loosened up, you just want to be careful as you're moving around kind of slowly. You can touch the bees and they'll move out of the way. You just don't, you start pinching them, that's when they're going to turn around and sting you. So,
You'll actually accidentally pinch more bees with gloves on than you will with bare hands, because you'll take your time with bare hands, and instead of just grabbing, you'll gradually move your hand in and then grip something.
So I was reading a book on the different hides. Is there a difference on that, like goat skin versus? I know you can feel more with goat skin versus like a cow or.
Yeah, when they start out, they'll make a difference.
I got these at Baumgart's.
Okay.
They were pretty good. I bought some for my son and me, and I had some other ones that you get this yellow stuff, the honey, the wax, the propolis that the bees make, pretty soon they get stiff. So I bought a new pair of Dadant. Well, they came clear up to here was one thing, and they were a lot stiffer than these other ones that I had for my son. So he doesn't get out there very much. Helps me once in a while, but so I was pleased with these. They're a little softer.
They all get pretty stiff with the propolis after a while.
Okay.
But another thing you can do, the blue nitrite.
Nitrile.
You can get some pretty thick ones of those. Yeah.
They can still sting. They'll sting through those too, but
especially the center ones.
but if you're squeamish about having bugs crawling on you, then put the nitrile gloves on.
Or
Until you get stung, and then you'll start wearing the leather gloves.
when you do get stung through those, you can typically pull the glove up and pop the stinger right out. So it's pretty quick. So you've got a hand to do that. That's an option.
The commercial factory-made beekeeper gloves tend to be goat skin. The bees often don't like the cowhide. You can tell immediately whether they're going to like your gloves or not. If you took a regular pair of cowhide gloves and waved them over the top of the hive, they'll let you know.
Goat skin is what I choose. Yeah. I mean, I've got different working gloves and lamb skin, goat skin, beef,
Whatever works for you.
Yeah, I was just wondering.
The tanning of the cowhide is pretty severe, and they've got fumes that they don't like.
So I've got something to show you on a package here. So hopefully we'll get to watch a Iowa State University video on installing a package of bees. So Dean, you talked about the package over there, right?
Yeah.
So when you take the can out and you get the queen cage in the frame, you want to shake the bees in. You know, you can do this, and you're going to pour a lot of bees out. But eventually you end up with a few hundred bees in here, and they're hanging onto the sides, and they're hard to get out. So if they weren't hanging onto the side, like if that was a bee, you would just do that and it would pour out, but they grip. So what you'll see people do is they'll take that package and they'll slam it down on the ground in the corner, so it knocks all the bees into the corner, like that block of wood's in the corner right now. Now when you tip it just right, tip it just right, they fall right out the hole. So you do that a few times, but that's why they're tapping it down on the corner to knock all the bees into one place and then try and dump them out.
And if you don't get them all out, can you just like set it next to the hive? They'll figure it out.
You can. You want to get as many out as you can.
Okay.
And then what I would do is set it at the front of the hive. Don't put it in the hive. But the one thing to keep in mind is this queen was in this cage for a while, and there's some queen pheromone in here. So some of the bees that are flying around may go back to the cage instead of going in the hive.
Okay.
So you want to set it there and watch it for a while. If it's getting more bees instead of less, then try and shake them out again and then go hide it somewhere. Okay. Yeah. Yep. Something to keep in mind. I also brought some frames.
The frames out there, we should probably take a look at them, but they're all wood and they've got plastic foundation that if you push in the center, it pops out as the wood grooves. These are all solid plastic all the way through. I like these. Wax moths can't chew them up. I don't have to put foundation in, but some people don't like using any more plastic than they have to, so I get some people don't like the plastic. I really like those. Another thing is I do quite a bit of foundationless. So this edge right here, the bees will follow that to draw the comb out. And you want to make sure that your hive is level because the bees will hang kind of like this chain of paper clips. And if your hive, turn it this way, if your hive isn't level, the bees are going to hang like that. And that's the way they're going to draw it down level. So it has to be level so that it comes down and hits that bottom bar. And then the top bar that I made, this is the type of frame that are in those. You can see when you butt two of these standard frames together, they've got ears on them, so it keeps a gap in there. When you have nothing framed like this, they all butt together, there is no gap. So when you're inspecting the top bar hive, you'll take a couple of empty ones out to give yourself like 2 spaces, and then that's the only opening that you're working with. You pull a frame towards you and you lift it up, you get done, you put it back in and you pull the next one out. So you can go all the way through that top bar hive and only expose 3 inches at a time. Lets some of the fumes or pheromones in the hives lets them out less, maybe. That's one of the reasons I got into the top bar hives. I felt they were a little more natural. What else we got? Anything?
Well, the stuff out here
Stuff
and
out there
by the hive, we can run through that stuff real quick.
Thank you.
So last week we kind of looked at a hive like this, which has telescoping top cover, an inner cover, and a queen excluder. Some of you didn't see this before. So this is a box with frames in it. This has an outline with this tape on it, kind of show you where the cluster of bees would kind of be around here. You'll have honey on the outside frames. The queen will probably be in the center here. You start beekeeping this, like John said, with a package of bees. You'll take some of these frames out, shake the bees down in here, and make sure your queen gets set along in between a couple of these frames here. If you got a package, the bees are going to start with something like this. There's no wax cells at all. So you're going to have to give those bees time to build up that wax to make the cells so the queen can start laying eggs. So that takes a little bit of time.
The only way they can get the wax is when the worker bees are old enough to produce the wax out of the glands.
Right. Which with the bees that are in the package, there's more than likely some of them that are going to be that age. So they can start in a little spot and work together, but it just takes time to fill this out.
There may be times that it's not so much dependent on age. Like they say a swarm of bees is just a foundation drawing machine.
Okay.
That they're just ready to produce wax.
Okay.
So I'm suspicious that something about that swarm instant triggers that wax gland too.
Trigger it in a few of them. Yeah.
So when you get the bees filling this out with wax cells and stuff, and you get like 6, 7 of these frames are full, and you got 2 empty ones on the outside, that's about the time you're going to want to add your next box on. You fill that out in a few more days, they'll run out of space and may swarm again. So you add on a second box like that.
Just a note, these both are the same size. These are what we're calling deep boxes. These are brood boxes. These are deep compared to this other one. See, that is a medium size here.
Okay.
there's one that's narrower than that. It's a small one, shallow.
To begin with, you'll want to feed your bees too. So that bottom box.
That's the bottom. So they just go from that one to this one.
Yep, they can move right up through there. There's nothing in between stopping them.
So there's a frame feeder that'll fit right in there that you can put sugar syrup in, which is a food for the bees that don't have to go out, you know, to find nectar. So that's one way to feed them. I use these feeders like this. I can put a couple gallons of sugar syrup in there.
These tanks hold the syrup, and the bees can come up through the bottom here. And so this pool of sugar water is in here. They can come up, but they can't get out of this. So you can open this up, check it, and fill it without getting into the inside of the hive.
Without disturbing the bees. So even if it's cold out, you can pop the top off and pour sugar syrup in there. The bees underneath don't even know you're there.
As opposed to this one, you have to get clear into the box to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, sometimes if you bought a nuke, usually a frame feeder like this would be in the nucleus hive.
They're coming out and they're coming in here.
The bees are
inside
in
that screen.
They come up from the center.
They come up inside there. So
Yeah.
they come up from here. They go up there, but they can't. And they can't get out.
They can feed through the screen.
Right.
Yeah.
The water, the
Sugar
liquid
syrup
is this deep in here.
Mm-hmm.
So on each side, so they can come up
Oh,
from
go
those
down
holes,
inside
and go
of
down
it.
into here, get into the liquid.
So I didn't see that before, but is it possible that you could make that and put like a float on the side so you wouldn't even have to take the top off to see if there's still
You could.
just with the winter, you know,
Well, you wouldn't have this in the winter.
right? But in the
No.
fall, in the cold.
Yep.
It probably gets sticky with sugar syrup and not work for very
Yeah,
long.
yeah.
But
As the year goes on and you get to the colder weather, it becomes, they need more and more of the carbohydrates. So you end up filling that with 2-to-1 instead of 1-to-1 sugar water. So summertime, springtime here, we'll all start feeding the 1-to-1 liquid. But then at the fall of the year, you start building up to 2-to-1 so that it's really dense and they can really get after it.
it's less work for them to process the 2-to-1 into honey-like substance for food.
Yep.
The other thing is 1-to-1 in the spring will stimulate brood rearing. Okay. So you don't want to do it like we might have in February. We might have a week of 60s.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to feed them 1-to-1 sugar syrup at that point because they'll start raising brood. Then it'll get cold again, and they can't keep it warm. So that's why like we do a lot of candy board, dry sugar, things like that early in the spring. And then in April, May, we want them to start ramping up. So we intentionally feed them 1-to-1 to give them something to eat, but 2 to also get them to draw out comb.
Just to make sure they've got the nectar.
Yep, and stimulate raising some brood so that that population will peak before the June nectar flow.
And when you do,
As soon as you start as soon as they start making honey, then you take the feeders off.
Yeah.
and when you make the syrup, do you boil it? Do you just mix it?
I don't boil it. You can actually scorch it pretty easily, and scorched sugar is really bad for the bees.
Water out of the faucet with the sugar.
Okay.
And you just use table sugar?
Yeah.
Yep.
Have you ever heard of anyone using maltose? Like if I brew beer, at the end,
Yeah.
there's still sugar in the grain. Could I use that spent grain to make sugar?
I don't know. You'd have to research it to make sure it's safe. I know they say it doesn't matter if it's beet sugar or cane sugar, but I don't know about that. And then the commercial guys feed high fructose corn syrup, which the old books will tell you never feed that to bees, but they pump it to them in the tanker truck now. So
Yes, because it's cheaper than.
Well, yeah,
cane
if I'm
sugar.
brewing beer, I still got it. I got the grain. I mean, it might not be enough to for the yeast to ferment, but it might be enough for the bees too.
Mhm.
So
Oh, they'll let you know.
yeah, right.
Well,
Just put some out in the grass.
I was gonna say, it might be something that you could put out somewhere where they have access to it
Yeah.
and see if they go to it
bird
and use it.
feeder or bird water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That might not be the ultimate test. I'd still research it.
Yeah.
Because I've heard people say bees will go to some things that end up being
Yeah,
bad
you
for
would
them.
wonder, I'd wonder if it was gonna ferment faster than cane sugar,
That's true.
since
Yeah.
it's already loaded with yeast and everything.
Yeah. Well, if you potentially could boil it, that it should take care of anything. But
Well, if that's the case, I don't know.
Yeah.
Research.
Now this hive has a solid bottom board on it. Here's a different option that has what's called a screen bottom. It has a slide in it. If this is setting up on a stand, you can take this out through the summer. There's more place for air ventilation in. There's just different options, however you want to deal with it. We were talking about that getting full of bees. There is a honey super to put on top because, like I said, on that bottom one, once you get 7 out of those 10 frames full, when this next box gets 7 out of those 10 frames full, it's time to put on another box. So put that on just like that, or in the right position anyway. But this one's, the honey's been taken out of there. The bees won't have to make wax on these frames that have been using year after year.
So that drawn out comb is a very valuable resource. It takes what, 6 pounds of honey for them to draw a pound of wax. So, you know, in other words, to draw out all of the wax that went into that box, that's lots and lots and lots of pounds of honey they didn't get to make. So since you can reuse those, that's a very valuable resource.
This is not plastic, like.
Yes.
The very center of it started out as plastic, probably.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, but they draw the rest of it out. The bees draw the rest of it out with wax.
So you have harvested the honey from these.
Right.
And it's reusable. You just put it back in and the bees can start to build.
Right.
Yep.
The issue after harvesting, in this is a frame that brood has gotten up into here.
I was gonna say, why is this one brown in the center? Because the queen was able to get up in here to lay eggs and raise more bees, which we don't want in our honey.
Right.
That's when the queen excluder is used.
The issue at the end of the year, after you harvest, is what to do with these and how to store them. That's a big question. And you have to store them properly, otherwise they will be ruined over the winter.
I'm just curious. There's the years written on the top. Is there a specific reason for that?
Yeah, because I was numbering all my frames. I started in 2015, and this was the super number 9 frame.
Okay.
Because I was going to keep them all in order.
Insane. Yeah.
Yeah. Until I went to extract the honey, and then I had 3 frames out of here and 3 frames out of this other box and put them here. It doesn't mean anything except this frame was put together in 2015. A lot of people want to rotate their frames out, but then I've got new ones that I've got from 2 years ago I haven't even used again.
I just want an idea of how old they are and how well they're holding up.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, there are a lot of recommendations out there that you replace those frames like every 4 years.
Okay.
So some people will put a date on them when they put them into service, and I don't know if anybody
And
is
then
really
keep
doing
using
it. Yeah, then they keep using them until they look ugly.
Well, you want to, there's different ways you can store them wet. If you're a place where they won't get wax moths and stuff. I'll take my box like that and set them out by my picnic table. The bees will come in and clean out every little tiny drop of honey that's left in those. And I generally put all mine in a freezer for a couple of days and then put them in my shed to store.
Explain what you meant by storing them wet, which you're not doing here.
Which I don't know.
You don't know. Okay.
Some people, well, Todd stores his wet. He's got a,
so
like a
wet
cargo.
means the honey is still on it. So they don't necessarily let the bees clean all of the honey off. And then, yeah, he stores them
in a
plastic
container.
bags with.
I don't think so. I think he's got a container, you know, a roll-off container of some sort. He puts them in.
So that one of the issues is there's a pest called a wax moth, and they will get into those if there aren't bees to protect them. And they lay eggs. The eggs hatch. The larvae eat the wax and pollen and honey. You know, honey supers aren't the most attractive to them, but they will get into them. And then they go through a pupa stage and they chew the wood up and they make webbing in it and frass. It's a mess. Basically ruins it. You wouldn't want to put honey back in it again. So the bee supply places sell moth, not moth crystals, but something for that type of moth.
These two are, technically, these two are optional.
Yes.
The real one is under here, or the basic. Standard. The standard is that. Those two have different functions that we like. But if you just bought a hive with a hive kit, that's likely what you would have.
So come August, you've taken your honey off. You'll probably want to feed them some more if there isn't resources out there for them. So they get these boxes filled up with as much honey as they can. You want all your bees and your stuff weighing like 100, 150 pounds to make it through the winter. So once it gets cold, you want to take your feeders off, you know, your syrup off and stuff. The thing that I use in the wintertime is an insulated cover like this. The bees can get out. There's an entrance on that end. So this goes on top. I'll take that inner cover off. This insulates the top. The bees could get out through there if they need to. If you got snow on the bottom entrance, it's a little bit of ventilation moving through there. Then you'd have your cover on top. Another thing, I built a bunch of these shields. If you want to have this stuff off there and put like pollen patty or some newspaper with dry sugar on it, this holds it up and gives a little space for those kinds of things. The only other thing I was going to share with this, how many frames are in this? On a 10 frame box? 10? No. Why would there only be 9? Well, as the bees build up their wax and make these cells, they'll be a little wider on these frames so that it sticks up away from this wood just a little bit. So when you go to extract the honey, you cut that top cap of wax off of there. If it sets up above these wood pieces, it's easier to cut off, and you can get more honey. You get more honey in the thing. So all of my honey suckers have these little frame rests on the side that space out for main frames. There's other little tools that it's a plastic thing with fingers on it. And you can put those on to space your frames just right.
So I mentioned in the first class, and talk about it more often. A lot of things that we do, we're mimicking the bees, or we're taking something that we already know the bees do, using it to our advantage. This frame isn't a good example, but in brood nests, they will only draw this brood frame out so far. Brood that they raise in there develops in that inside that cell, and basically so long. But when they get out to the honey area here, if there's enough room in between frames, they will draw the honey out, the honey area thicker. It's just natural. It's more efficient for them. You know, when I draw another cell, let's draw these out a little bit thicker. So this is mimicking their natural instinct to draw the honey storage frames out further. Like these, and it's easier to work with for us, and it's more efficient for the bees than one the frame and draw the whole thing. But they'll utilize the same amount of space.
And John talked about using 8 frames, mediums like this. You know, if this is full of honey, it's going to weigh 6 pounds. You get one of these boxes, which some people use all deep boxes like that. It can weigh 100 pounds when it's full of honey. And
Believe it or not, it's each frame, each one of these frames will weigh up to 5 pounds. And that's a lot to manage for most people. We don't deal with these very often. That way we have, but that's why John wisely went to 8 frame boxes.
Another thing to keep in mind is when you set your hives up, if you got it on a hive stand, if it's on a pallet or concrete blocks or a commercial stand or on a table, just, you know, if your bees can fly in there, which is really great, but after you get a honey box up on top of here, or 2 or 3, sometimes maybe 5 honey boxes, how are you going to reach it? You know, so you're going to want to keep that in mind as you're putting things together too. Access to them. And
not only access, but the taller it gets, the more likely it is to tip over in the wind. I actually had 1 or 2 hives tip over. I happened to go out to check them the next day. And you know, the cornfields got flattened. So this free fields does have more like. That's one disadvantage of the 8 frame bees, is I end up with more boxes and they're already narrow.
so we covered a lot tonight.
Yeah. Anybody
Any questions or?
I am.
If you don't get overwhelmed, you're not learning anything. If you didn't already get 2 magazines, they're old magazines with information and still good.
Catalogs are there.
Datings, catalogs. These are free too.
It's all the same catalog.
No.
Oh, these are all different?
There's a few different. Not as many, but there's 2 or 3 different issues at least. And then the catalog.
I have not heard from those man like those guys yet either.
Well, that's right.
I have a question from 2 questions. If this is a new catalog.
Well, there's one other thing I wanted to show you before.
People ask about wintering and what you do with them. This is what I've invested in, is this winter wrap. When I first started, I took chart paper, stapled it on there and stuff, and the wind would blow, and this fits around just like that, like Velcro slip on it.
Adds little insulation and blocks all those grooves from the wind getting in there.
Keeps the wind from getting in the cracks, little insulation, and it's black, so when the sun shines on it, it heats up.
They were like $22, $26 when I was buying them. Now they're like $46.
All right, cool.
So, I didn't pay for the class yet,
Okay.
and I have some cash, but not 75 because
If you want,
I
I'm gonna just deal with it next week. That's fine.
totally deal with it next week. I have it do a full. So, because do you take check or cash? Okay. Yeah, no, my husband called me on the way here and was like, "So I didn't tell you, but," and I was like, "Well, if I turn around, I'll be late later."
No, that's not a problem at all. So the next session, the slides are out there on my website, so loneoakcounty.com, and then the beginning beekeeping page. So the more you get through ahead of time, the more we can just deal with answering questions and stuff.
And the next one is the one I have to miss.
Okay,
So-
I'll have to try and make sure we get it
How many
recorded
are
for you.
there?
5 total, so this was 2.
Okay.
5.
Yeah, if it's next time, it's no big deal.
I got one. So what was your name again?
Rick Samuelson.
Okay, so there you are. Yep. Yeah, I think I do have a 5.
Okay.
I did earlier anyway.
Tried to get it broken, but I was running late the way it was. Yeah. Yeah, I used to have a small one like that too, and I used it for a long time and I liked it, but then I went back to the big bulky one, and I do like storing all the stuff I got in it, you know.
I'm gonna owe you a buck.
Okay, sounds good.